Nihilism, from the Latin nihil, or nothing, is the philosophical doctrine suggesting the negation of one or more putatively meaningful aspects of life. Most commonly, nihilism is presented in the form of existential nihilism, which argues that life is without objective meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value. Moral nihilists assert that morality does not inherently exist, and that any established moral values are abstractly contrived. Nihilism can also take epistemological, metaphysical, or ontological forms, meaning respectively that in some aspect knowledge is not possible, or that, contrary to popular belief, some aspect of reality does not exist as such. The term nihilism is sometimes used in association with anomie, to explain the general mood of despair at a perceived pointlessness of existence that one may develop upon realizing that there are no necessary norms, rules, or laws. Movements such as futurism and deconstruction, among others, have been identified by commentators as nihilistic at various times in various contexts. Nihilism is also a characteristic that has been ascribed to time periods. For example, Jean Baudrillard and many others have called postmodernity a nihilistic epoch, and some Christian theologians and figures of religious authority have asserted that postmodernity and many aspects of modernity represent a rejection of theism, and that rejection of their theistic doctrine entails nihilism. Skepticism, or skepticism, see spelling differences, has many definitions, but generally refers to any questioning attitude towards knowledge, facts, or opinions or beliefs stated as facts, or doubt regarding claims that are taken for granted elsewhere. The word may characterize a position on a single matter, as in the case of religious skepticism, which is doubt concerning basic religious principles such as immortality, providence, and revelation. But philosophical skepticism is an overall approach that requires all information to be well supported by evidence. The skeptics may even doubt the reliability of their own senses. Classical philosophical skepticism derives from skeptikoi, a school who asserted nothing. Adherents of Pyrrhonism, for example, suspend judgment in their investigations. Fallibilism, from the medieval Latin fallibilis, or liable to err, is the philosophical principle that human beings could be wrong about their beliefs, expectations, or their understanding of the word, or the world. In the most commonly used sense of the term, this consists in being open to new evidence that would disprove some previously held position or belief, and in the recognition that any claim justified today may need to be revised or withdrawn in light of new evidence, new arguments, or new experiences. This position is taken for granted in the natural sciences. In another sense, it refers to the consciousness of the degree to which our interpretations, valuations, our practices and traditions are temporally indexed and subject to, or possibly arbitrary, historical flux and change. Such time-responsive fallibilism consists in an openness to the confirmation of a possibility that one anticipates or expects in the future. Some fallibilists argue that absolute certainty without knowledge, or about knowledge, Some fallibilists argue that absolute certainty about knowledge is impossible. As a formal doctrine, fallibilism is most strongly associated with Charles Sanders Peirce, John Dewey, and other pragmatists who use it in their attacks on foundationalism. However, it is already present in the views of ancient philosophers that were adherents of philosophical skepticism, including the philosopher Pyrrho. Fallibilism is related to Pyrrhonistic skepticism in that Pyrrhonists of history are sometimes referred to as fallibilists, and modern fallibilists as Pyrrhonists. Another proponent of fallibilism is Karl Popper, who builds his theory of knowledge, critical rationalism, on fallibilistic presuppositions. Fallibilism has been employed by Willard van Orman Quine to attack, among other things, the distinction between analytic and synthetic statements. Unlike Unlike skepticism, fallibilism does not imply the need to abandon our knowledge. We needn't have logically conclusive justifications for what we know. Rather, it is an admission that because empirical knowledge can be revised by further observation, any of the things we take as knowledge might possibly turn out to be false. Some fallibilists make an exception for things that are axiomatically true, such as mathematical or logical knowledge. Others remain fallibilists about these as well, on the basis that even if these axiomatic systems are in a sense infallible, we are still capable of error when working with these systems. The critical rationalist Hans Alberts argues that it is impossible to prove any truth with certainty, even if logic and mathematics. This argument is called the Munchausen trilemma. Truth has a variety of meanings, such as the state of being in accord with fact or reality. It can also mean having fidelity to an original or to a standard or ideal. In a common usage, it also means constancy or sincerity in action or character. The direct opposite of truth is falsehood, which can correspondingly take logical, factual, or ethical meanings. However, language and words are essentially tools by which humans convey information to one another. As such, truth must have a beneficial use in order to be retained within language. Defining this potency and applicability can be looked upon as criteria, and the method used to recognize a truth is termed a criterion of truth. Since there is no single accepted criterion, they can all be considered theories. Various theories and views of truth continue to be debated among scholars and philosophers. There are different claims on such questions as what constitutes truth, what things are truth-bearers capable of being true or false, how to define and identify truth, the roles that revealed and acquired knowledge play, and whether truth is subjective or objective, relative or absolute. Solipsism is the philosophical idea that one's mind, only one's mind, is sure to exist. The term comes from the Latin solus, alone, and ipsum, self. Solipsism, as an epistemological position, holds that knowledge of anything outside one's own mind is unsure. The external world and other minds cannot be known, and might not exist outside the mind. As a metaphysical position, solipsism goes further to the conclusion that the world and other minds do not exist. As such, it is the only epistemological position that, by its own postulate, is both irrefutable and yet indefensible in the same manner. Although the number of individuals sincerely espousing solipsism has been small, it is not uncommon for one philosopher to accuse another's argument of entailing solipsism as an unwanted consequence, in a kind of reductio ad absurdum. In the history of philosophy, solipsism has served as a skeptical hypothesis.